Let me formally say good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this briefing, which, as the MPs know, is part of a series of virtual briefings with the support of Wilderness Foundation Africa and ICCF. Thank you for the honourable members. I know it's recess time, so thank you for being here. And as always, thank you so much, Chairperson Gabriel Clarsen, for allowing us to do this and for hosting this briefing. So today for me is a very special briefing. As you all know, on the 16th of June, 1976, young people in South Africa took to the street to protest against one of the biggest issues of their time that they felt, and that was rightly felt, would affect their future, i.e. that of education and specifically the language of instruction. 45 years later, young people continue to let their voices be heard on a number of issues that would affect their future. And undoubtedly, the one of climate change and whether there will be a future for our planet is one of the biggest, not only here in South Africa, but also around the globe. So I'm extremely privileged today that we have been able to secure and have the opportunity to engage with some of South Africa's leading youth climate activists. They are Gabriel Clarsen, Michelle Mhaka, and Sibusiso Mazomba. And they are all part of the African Climate Alliance. Thank you so much, guys, for being willing to engage with us. I'm not going to introduce them individually. They are going to introduce themselves as they are speaking. And as the chair said earlier on, this is their forum. So I'm going to pass over to them. I think Sibusiso, you said you are going to start, right? And just remember to introduce yourself. Over to you.
Thank you, Melanie. Good afternoon to all the MPs present today. Thank you for having us. We're really excited to engage in this discussion with you, because as young people, rallying to engage with the people who are, the policymakers and the decision makers, that's the what we've been sort of aiming to do. And we're really delighted to take part in this discussion today. So without wasting too much time, my name is Sibusiso Mazomba. I am an intersectional activist. I'm very passionate about engaging in climate discourse and engaging in youth-led policymaking processes to ensure that the most vulnerable in our communities, especially in the South African context, do not have to become the shock absorbers for impacts of climate change in the future. I'm a member of the African Climate Alliance together with Gabriel and Michelle today. I'm the implementation lead for the first ever upcoming National Youth Climate Action Plan, so that's quite exciting. I'm also part of the South African Institute of International Affairs under the Youth Policy Committee, and also the official United Nations delegate for the pre-COP26 events coming up this year in September. And with that being said, I would like to pass it on to Michelle. Thank you.
Good morning or afternoon to everyone. I'm Michelle. I am 21 years old and I am a social and environmental justice activist, which basically means I believe the environment cannot exist with the social aspect, and the social aspect can't exist where we don't have an environment. I believe in access to education. I believe in access to free and fair opportunities, again, especially in a country such as ours, where the gap is way too big. I believe that we can actually close it. But as a young person, as many young person in this country, I believe that one way we can ensure that our future is as bright as we hope it to be is when older people, the older generation starts to listen, starts to engage with us and starts to treat us as people who know exactly what they're talking about and are fighting for a future that's worth fighting for. Gabriel.
Thank you, Michelle. Good afternoon, all. It's a pleasure to be here once as those before me have spoken. My name is Gabriel Clarsen. I'm a 22-year-old turning 23 socio-environmental justice activist from Gatesville, Cape Town. I believe in a future that is defined by social and environmental justice, one that is built on an equitable and just kind of transition of land, of water, of resources, of education, and of energy. I am the youth coordinator for the African Climate Alliance, which is a youth-led movement, an organization now advocating for climate and ecological justice and social justice. We believe in a future defined by environmental and social justice, and that the only way that we can achieve this is through dynamic and Afrocentric environmental education and action, while simultaneously creating a safe space and inclusive space for all African youth. So we are all from the South African kind of Lego branch of the ACA, as we will refer to it. So if you hear ACA, it's African Climate Alliance. I'm also the communications officer for Project 90 by 2030, which is also a socio-environmental justice organization. And I'm also sitting on the board of South African Climate Action Network. And it's a deep pleasure to be here today. I'll pass back to Sibusiso, and he can get us started with a few of the points that we would like to bring up and highlight today. I promise we will go easy until we don't.
Right. Thank you very much, Gabriel. And so coming into the session today, we had to, really think very hard as to what do we young people, what have we been calling for, and how can we use this session to make sure that, by the end of today, we can synergize our action together with the Member of Parliament present here today, so that, we garner more momentum behind the discourse of climate action in the country. And so one of those, or a few of those points that I will bring up is we've been engaging quite robustly on the NDCs. We released a statement a while ago with the African Climate Alliance. And in the statement, it highlights some of our viewpoints that we young people would like to see. And key to those points being the issue of tokenism, to put it quite bluntly. And why do I say that? Because during the NDC session that we had the last time, what we saw that during the session, our mics were muted throughout the whole session. The chat was disabled, and we couldn't participate in the whole session as young people who were being called to share their perspectives into the session. And yet, it's supposed to be a consultative process together with young people. So we couldn't see any of that. And so what we're really calling for is for there to be more meaningful youth engagement. Young people, we shouldn't be, calling for us not to be seen as additives or as a tick boxing exercise to some of the engagements that we had, especially with the NDC engagement that we had. Because then, young people, we have a very large stake to play in the mitigation potential of the country. And further to that, just calling for our NDCs are not as ambitious as they should be, and so calling for raised ambition in that regard. For example, more research to be done in the AFOLU sector, for example, because it wasn't as comprehensive, and the emissions in that sector weren't explained enough, or how they would be accounted for in our country's fair share. Because then, as at the moment, we're not aligned with our fair share together with the rest of the world. And so that's the NDC statement that we released together with the Mail and Guardian. It was published in the Mail and Guardian, and also the climate change bill. And then I'll pass on to Michelle. The climate change bill comments were requested from young people a while ago, but now we haven't really heard back as to what are the steps forward on the climate change bill, and would really like to get an update on that process and how everything is working out, because we contributed as young people our perspectives on that, and so it's a very important bill that we believe, if implemented and dealt with in the right way, can contribute to some substantive change with the discourse and the climate action in the country. So those were some of the points that we spoke about. And I would like to pass on to Michelle now just to elaborate further on some of the other points that we wanted to talk about today. Thank you.
Thanks, Sibusiso. So one of the things that we noticed were that it's not just for Youth Month, it's for a lot of things that have to do with young people. A lot of the times young people are engaged in, excuse me, certain times of the year, simply because, again, like Sibusiso mentioned, it's almost like a tick boxing exercise, and that's how we feel, right? For instance, you'd find during Youth Month, there's a lot of things that happen. There are a lot of, you'll find that in a lot of youth-led organizations will be contacted during Youth Month, sometimes even the day before. And immediately after June 16, everything almost like goes down. And it doesn't make us feel very important, but more than anything, it makes us feel like we are being used, the issue of tokenization, which I think is disrupting with what we are trying to do as young people, because we have a message, and not only is it crucial, it's important that people from all walks of life understand it, right? So the message is climate change is real, regardless of whether we might not feel it as directly as other people from maybe underprivileged communities or underserved communities. In fact, for the purposes of the rest of the meeting, I will be referring to what we would normally call underprivileged communities as purposefully ignored communities, because that's how we feel. But yeah, one of the very big problems is that we find that this is a trend, this is a fashion, it's a thing that groups from certain walks of life are only engaged when there's one particular day that's dedicated to them. And I think it defeats the whole purpose of there being a youth day to begin with. I mean, I understand how important it is because we are commemorating the youth of 1976, but then the youth of today, we are just being engaged on that one day. It completely defeats the whole purpose. But apart from that, we need to understand that the youth of this country are not quite up to speed with issues related to climate change. And this can be attributed to government and other people in positions of power not actually coming up with education that allows them to understand what's happening. A very good example is if you go to a purposefully ignored community, you talk about climate change, they don't understand what you're talking about because they either haven't heard about it before or they have much more pressing issues. And I think it's very, very important for us to understand that the only way as South Africa we're going to move forward is if everyone is engaged in a meaningful way. But more than anything, it's made so that those people understand that we're in a crisis. Yeah, and we need to get to a point where we understand that climate change is real and it's here. We are seeing it in other parts of the country. What needs to be done so that we can move forward is that we need to understand measures that need to be taken place, that need to be put in place so that these communities and everyone do not feel the brunt of climate change as hard as it would be if we just chose to ignore it, right? So that means there is need for mitigation, which means we need to get to a point where we interfere with our environment to such a point where when climate change does hit, it's not as impactful as it would be if we would just ignore it. Which moves us to the next point of tackling climate change and how to do that. And I'll give that to Gabriel to elaborate.
Awesome. Thank you, Michelle, and thank you, Sebasisa, for highlighting those points. I think just touching on each point that you just made about tokenism, first of all, we understand that this is not a space that is tokenism. This is one that is actually letting us lead the space. And, you know, that's why to all the different members present, we are truly grateful for that. And, you know, for it to be a non-partisan space as well is quite amazing to have everyone's ears. So we are very grateful for that. But also we see tokenism in the highest forms of youth engagement. For example, our friend and a fellow activist, a part of African Climate Alliance, Ayaka Melitafa, she sits on the P4C, the Presidential Climate Change Committee. And she is, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the only 18-year-old, the only under 20, the only youth, quote unquote, representative present. And things that are put in place and said are not inclusive of what her level of knowledge actually is. You've got people part of civil society who are saying this and that, and then Ayaka sits and she's got to do extra limit of work to ensure that she is kept up to date with things, because climate education has not been something that is prioritized. Environmental education is not something that has been prioritized in our school systems. You know, the fact that many of us don't know unless we sit in geography or life sciences, we don't care. And then in our communities, like Michelle said, the fact that going into a community, for example, if you go into my community, I grew up in Hanover Park and Mitchell's Plain predominantly. And so if you go into anywhere in my community and you ask anyone there to explain to you why they can't be a part of this climate march or the climate mobilization, it's because they need to make sure that there's food on the table for the next day. There's food on the table for that night. And, there's lights, I can walk, thankfully I can walk and switch a light on and switch a light off, but there are people that can't do that. And so people have priorities. So they can't do the extra bit of education and homework that they need to do, or that is not provided to them. So climate education is a definite must. And then to the point about climate action that needs to occur. First of all, I think, in South Africa, we need to declare a climate emergency. If we don't declare a climate emergency, in essence, what we're doing and what we're saying is that we acknowledge what you're saying. We're going to do all we can to fix what you're experiencing, but there's no actual proof that things will be sorted. Because the second government or anyone who has the power to declare that emergency declares that emergency, then it becomes top priority that it needs to be sorted out. And when it becomes top priority, that means people have to do extra work that they otherwise cannot or do not want to do. Or, as many of us know, our government, there is a lot of corruption here and there in different spaces. And so that is also a facet that we need to make sure is looked into. The fact that people aren't truly looking into the fact that, this is a thing that happens. We saw during the beginning months last year, we even commended our government and president for his quick action toward the climate, toward the COVID-19 pandemic. But we weren't praising him. We were thanking him for taking quick action, but that's all, because he was able to find, the government was able to find money to act fast for COVID. So why not act for something as big as the climate breakdown that we are going to be experiencing, that we are experiencing now before it's too late? And we can see that climate change is a thing. We can see that climate breakdown is a thing. And so why not act now and start working on it so we can mitigate the effects of climate injustice? And I think ways that they really want to really highlight is there needs to be a green fund or just transition fund. There needs to be a real focus on a just energy transition, because energy in our country is a massive issue. And specifically around climate, water and energy are the kind of main points or talking points that we often hear being brought up. And so, the fact that, there isn't really much focus, and that many people just use the term just transition as a trigger word to catch the news here and there. Oh, so-and-so mentioned just transition. And okay, that's great. But what is truly coming out of that? Over the years, we've heard our different ministers mention this and that and say one thing and do another. And we're tired of that as young people in South Africa. And then just as I come to my closing, and I check if any one of my fellow speakers want to say something before we open the space for conversation, I just truly want to say that youth are tired. We are not going to sit idly by while our future is being taken away from us. The youth of the 76 fought strongly for the future that they wanted. They believe that the future is one that they can define, not one that will be defined for them. And they did that. And I believe strongly that the only reason, the fact that three people of color were young people speaking in a space like this just today, that is because of the actions of those before us. And it's because they heard the call for change when there was a call. All we're asking is that those before us, as they have heard the call, help us while we are answering the call for our change. We are not going to sit idly by and this is a word that's been used by our Archbishop Desmond Tutu and I'm going to use it here again, but we're not going to sit idly by and suffer in a climate apartheid. It is a climate apartheid that we are facing, that we will continue to face, because the same people who were pulled down and affected during apartheid are going to be the same people and are the same people who were disproportionately affected today by the climate injustice and social injustice. And so that is my closing for you, Michelle, Sibusiso, if you've got any other points that you'd like to talk about. The space is yours, but I truly believe that the only way forward is through inclusive, intersectional, just transition and a way forward where youth are given a voice that is more than just, cool, you were here, thanks.
I'd like to just add on to that. Gabriel summed it up very, very comprehensively. But just to add on to that, you know, in the South African context, our country is so unequal, and inequality is like a very big issue. And so the climate change and climate action, it's instead of it being seen as, you know, having to invest additional energy into fighting climate change while at the same time fighting poverty and fighting corruption, we should instead see it in an intersectional lens. And what does that mean? It means that it should be seen, you know, as a vehicle that will allow us to systemically change as a country, but to also make sure that moving forward, we move into a more sustainable, a more green sort of economy, more green society. And how do we envision that? Is that using what we already have as a country, you know, using some of the human potential and the human capital, the youth capital that we have in the country. And for example, in some of our city centers, you find that there's so many waste pickers, right? Waste pickers, they're not being given the support that they need. And they do like almost 50% of the recycling that takes place in the country. And so it only makes sense that you know, some capacity is given to those people, because then not only are they creating employment opportunities for themselves, but at the same time, they're making sure that, you know, there's less waste in the environment, there's more recycling that happens, there's more sustainability in the long term. And so while government has definitely tried to, you know, support waste pickers, I know there was an initiative in Johannesburg where they had like workshops with them to teach them entrepreneurial skills, to give them some special clothes for like visibility in the city, you know, to give them their own lanes where they could drive and, you know, make it easier for them to move around the city. But then what we're seeing is that initiatives like that, they're not being, you know, taken further. It was like a pilot program, and I don't think much happened after that. And that capacity is definitely something that we need for waste pickers. Also with informal traders in our city centers as well, who are mostly women who are supporting their families, right? And they source all of their goods from local subsistence farmers, who are also trying to make a living while also, you know, being sustainable. But then what we see that, you know, the city is giving them so much trouble. The city officials, there's like trading laws. It stifles any sort of meaningful strides to be made in that sector. And so recognizing industries like that as a tool for innovation, but also as a tool for intersectionality and moving the climate change discourse in our country in a way that other countries are not doing it, because we're a developing nation according to, we're a developing nation. And so for us, it's not about changing the whole system, but it's about manufacturing new systems and making sure that moving forward, those systems are green and they're sustainable and they can be maintained in the future. So yeah, that's just the point that I just wanted to add. Thank you.
Yeah, and if I can have the last word, I think the presidential office, or at some point, there was an article that came from there which spoke about not leaving any African child behind. And I mentioned that, especially because we view climate change action as social justice action. It means you can't have climate justice without factoring in the people aspects of things. And today we are so honored to have this platform, because then we can speak on the social justice aspect of things from a youth point of view. For instance, currently in this country, we have high unemployment rate. It's soaring, 70+% in unemployed youth. We view something like the Just Transition Fund as an opportunity to address the social inequalities, meaning that government or those in power gets a chance to incubate talent while also prioritizing the environment. So in very few words, what this is about is not neglecting one or the other. It's using the one to build the other, right? So it means we're prioritizing the environment while also ensuring that we also fight against youth unemployment rates. and so on and so forth. So what this basically does is it creates a snowball effect of good things relative to climate action and social justice. And yeah, we just really believe that there needs to be more collaboration between young people and legislators, which is why us being here, we feel like this is such a big step and also such an honor. Because there are young people who are on the ground who are working in the climate change space. And when I speak about on the ground, it's like the people who are in communities, the people who are educating communities, the people who are making noise about the things that otherwise wouldn't make the news, right? And we believe that that collaboration needs to be there between legislators and youth, because we have a vision for the future and we know how to get there. We really just need help from the older generation, if we can put it that way. So yeah, we just really believe that youth need to be engaged beyond Zoom calls and other sorts of meetings. It really needs to be meaningful and impactful.
Okay, thank you. So let's see, that is the sort of initial few comments, and let's see if we can get some good engagement going. Maybe with the MPs, if you could just put on your camera, then I know that you'd like to ask something or say something. I would also like to ask that you guys explain intersectionality a little bit. I know it's a language my kids use a lot as well, but I think that is something that is a more recent phenomenon in, I was going to say academic language, but also in activism. So maybe you can also elaborate on that a little bit, and also indicate what, what specifically you would want. But let me give over to the honorable member from the EFF, who is sitting in his car. That's really commitment. Honorable member, please go ahead. You ask your question.
Good afternoon, Melanie. Sorry, I just landed in Bloemfontein and I'm here for work, and I missed quite a bit, but I think I got some very important inputs from the youth that I think it was very good to listen to, and I'd like to know from them, and I mean I have some ideas, but the last speaker said they want more than just a Zoom meeting or a meeting to deal with the issues of climate. And I think it was Gabriel that also said the youth won't sit idly by, and I like that. You know, we mustn't sit idly by while the world is going up in smoke. I'd like to know what it is that they feel should be done to assist them in their activism going forward, and how we can have more regular engagements. And also, Melanie, if you could give my contact details with them, I think it's wonderful if we could actually meet face to face and come up with other interventions and other activities that could help them and could help all of us, in fact, in our activism. Thank you very much once again.
Do you guys want to respond to that?
Yeah, thanks, Melanie. I'll go first, Gabriel, and then you can go.
Now I was about to say, I see.
Yeah, thank you, honorable member. So one of the things that we feel would help with the movement or the work that we're trying to do is if we had access to the communities that are previously mentioned as purposefully ignored. This means that we need to recognize as a country that English is not the only medium of communication. We need to get to a point where we develop educational content that is specifically tailored for these communities. That means if it means translating this to their mother language, then that's what we do. If it means training community leaders from these communities to better engage with their communities, because it doesn't make sense for me, for instance, coming from Cape Town, traveling all the way to Mpumalanga and having a workshop of some sort with people who are in Mpumalanga, who don't have a relationship with me, one, but who also don't understand why I'm coming all the way from Cape Town when they have people that are there. So that is one thing that we would like to see more of. Affordable, possibly even free educational content that goes into these communities, because this is vital. And we need to have some kind of incubation programs that allow us to hone these, how do you call them, these skills, these talents, because there's a lot of untapped talents in underprivileged communities and townships. I mean, what have you? You have all of these things that are just sitting there. And we would want to see a future where young people are growing into who they can be, especially in a space such as climate activism, which has so many opportunities. Again, a person can go in, study something that's related to climate justice or climate education or anything of that sort, and they can be very, very impactful. So in turn, that actually would fight against the high unemployment rates we have in this country. So those are just two things that are off the top of my head that I am thinking about. Gabriel?
There you go. Yeah, definitely. So I'm going to touch base on first the question that Melanie asked, which is intersectionality, to explain it just a little bit. Intersectionality means something different for everybody, because this word is something that, of course, is an old word, but is being re-envisioned as something new. And so what we mean by intersectionality, we mean we don't want a fair situation where it's like, cool, now we've got a guy and a girl and a non-binary person, and now things are perfect. It's like, no, who has been left away from the table? And how are we now going to make sure that those voices are amplified and inserted into the table in ways that are not, cool, you're here, now stay out of our business, sit in your chair that is ceremonial. For us, intersectionality means that we follow our, if I'm not mistaken, I could be mistaken, but it could be section 9 of our constitution, that says that there's no discrimination against anyone from different gender, sex, orientation, what have you. And now to actually take care of that and realize that it's a form of discrimination to to push people out of the way and not include them in decisions for their future. I mean, our constitution is our quote unquote Bible for this country, yet it's not being followed in the many different ways. And so I think, honestly, intersectionality means that people who are going to be affected by the situation need to be included, not only in the conversation after the fact, but the planning of the thing. So, for example, the NDC, I'm talking about it because it's still very hot news right now. It was not consulted prior to its development by women, by youth, by disabled people, by anyone else in really low-income urban areas and rural areas. It wasn't. And then when it comes to us for consultation, it's like, cool, you're here, but we're not really going to edit anything. We'll change a few words around for you and strengthen this part, and then that's it. But there's a saying that one of my colleagues say, and she's a white woman, and she says, a plan made by a white woman is still a plan ran out by a white woman, even if Black and brown people are running it out. And so a plan developed by a small group of people ran out by a nation of diverse people, a rainbow nation, if you will, is still a plan that is made with the mindset of the small and the few. And so intersectionality is ensuring that equitable incorporation of gender, different people of different gender expressions, people of different orientations, people of different bodily functions. So like, if you're disabled, to be present, if you're able-bodied, to be present, and not necessarily just that, but deaf as well, and blind. Not only that, but I'm so tired of seeing the excuses of like, oh, but we can't do this. It's like, find the budget somewhere. If you want change, you will find the budget somewhere. If you were in the position of that person being left out, you would want someone to find the budget somewhere. And so that's what we mean by intersectionality, at least my explanation of it. And then to touch on, I CC everything to what Michelle said. truly, I think her points were right on the nail, ensuring that we make sure that what we mean by we're not sitting idly by as our future is taken away from us, we mean that we need people in power today to have us at the table in the different spaces, even if it's just us sitting in the corner quietly, and you know that we're there, and you're like, cool, I'm remembering you. Don't worry, I remember what you said last time. That is something that is important. Even though it's not what I want us to all be at the table talking, but I feel as though right now anything is better than nothing, but we won't settle for the bare minimum either. So thank you. That's, I think, if that answers the question relatively.
Okay, Sibusiso, did you want to add, or can we move to the next question?
Yeah, just a little bit. So also with how we can, keep the conversation going, because we definitely, while we're very appreciative of, the engagement today, and I think it's a very important one. It's really, it feels so nice to finally be recognized and to finally be heard and, acknowledged as, because young people are definitely working on the ground. We're in spaces of policy and activism. Young people are definitely have shown that we want to engage in discussions that really matter, and we're willing to do that. And so we don't see this discussion as a standalone one. And so moving forward, perhaps just thinking about ways as to how we can make sure that young people are included in conversations of climate change across the country. Could be calling for there to be climate ambassadors, for example, climate ambassadors who will then be a bridge between communities and between policymakers. And so having young people in each of the provinces who will go into communities, find out about the lived experiences of those communities, and bring that back into the policymakers within each of the cities, so that we make sure that some of the policies that go into addressing climate change, they must be reflective of the lived experiences of the communities, but also of the lived experiences of the young people who form part of the communities as well. So just thinking about it in that way would be something would be willing to take up on as well.
Thank you. Honorable Singh, you had your hand up.
I think I did. Hi, Melanie.
Hi.
And hi, everybody. And hi to my colleagues that are online and to our young friends that are online. Sorry that I joined in a bit late and I have to run at 1 o'clock. I hope you're done by then and we've been able to answer some of the questions. But one thing I appreciated, Melanie, as I joined in was the fire in the belly. And I think that's what we need, the fire in the belly. And I'm so glad that these young people have come along to share some of their views with us and are so passionate about climate change. It reminds me of my 1971 university days and my days in school before that, when we did exactly what they did. But I think my colleague, Honorable Paulsen, asked a pertinent question is, from here, we are hearing them. What happens from here? So, but thank you for organizing this, Melanie. I think we need to continually engage on a formal basis. This is an informal get-together, but I see our chairperson, Honorable Kaba, on CASA online. I don't know if he's, you know what happens in the Eastern Cape, they on and off. But oh, he's there, right? But perhaps.
No, I'm there. Yes.
Hi, Comrade Kasa, how are you?
Fine.
Good. I'm fine, thanks. But perhaps we should, at a formal level, when we're having our portfolio committees, invite presentations from this grouping, so that they documented, the Parliament gets to hear about what they want to say, and then we take some decisive steps, action steps that we need to put timeframes to and follow through. We have a thing, Chairperson, we have youth parliament, we have women's parliament. Why can't we have a parliament on climate change? Because it's one of the significant things that is going to affect not only the present, but the very distant future. So that's something that I'm going to suggest. And, personally, I don't underestimate the value that youth can bring to any discussion. Many of us, political party leaders, some of us from Parliament were in Germany about a year and a half ago, and we went to the former eastern part of Germany to look at social housing and things like that. And we found that in one city, the whole social housing development there was actually informed by what the youth wanted. Because normally when you look at social housing, you look at the Cape Flats or something like that, or Wentworth or Chatsworth, and you think, well, how boring it is, and how can young people be brought up in that kind of environment? Yet they came up with creative ideas of open spaces, color, places where their grandparents can go and sit on benches in gardens where they could learn from each other and things like that. You know, and it gave a whole new meaning to social housing. And all that came from the youth. So that's why I say I don't underestimate the value that you can bring. But I think we need to formalize the relationship, not at a party to student, to you level, but from a parliament to the youth level, and bring in as well, Melanie, provincial government representatives, SALGA, which is local government, because I think Sbusiso touched on issues affecting local government, or was it Michelle or Gabriel, one of you, on waste picking and, plastic use, etc., etc. So perhaps we need to first hear you out and then engage at those levels. So your thoughts, your ideas, can grow on government, so that government can start taking action. So I think I'm very encouraged by this engagement, and thank you, Melanie, and thank you to Gabriel, Sbusiso, and Michelle, and others who are online. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I wonder, Chairperson, do you want to come in here as well? I also know there are some questions around the climate change bill, whether, I don't know where in the process that is at the moment. I think is a table, I don't know, you might be more adverse at this.
Okay, no, thank you very much. In fact, first we are excited indeed to engage with people young as we might have been some years ago. In fact, I belong to that generation of 1976. I was young then. And but the message is very clear that 1976 is not like 2021. So there are still young people now who want to know what is it that the future is likely going to look like. But specifically now on the issue of disengagement and possible the future, helped by Melanie here. In other words, so that we don't have to create something new. We must say we listened to young people speaking. We picked out some of the issues they raised and possible actions, and how do we consolidate that? So I'm actually, before you, tasking Melanie to say, let's come up with an idea that is going to say practically now. And I think generally the two members who have spoken are also saying the same, to say, let's build from here. What do we build from here? We are saying we will listen to you young people. We have listened. And I think from this session, as you go out, you are going to throw ideas as to how best can we take it from here and formalize it. And I think Honorable Singh has indicated that Parliament, in fact, Parliament has got that big role. You asked about legislation. Yes, you see, this COVID challenge has created a problem for us. When we came in 2019 towards the end, all the pieces of legislation that were taken to the NCOP had to be taken back. So in other words, that bill that you made inputs in, it's still going to come back and be tabled in the House. We're still going to engage again. So it was affected by the change of government, and also affected by the COVID-19. So it's still coming back. But I think what we need to agree on is to say we agree, we have met now. Out of the engagement, let's develop a program, let's formalize it. And when I say formalize it, we might be committee, and then beyond that is parliament. And one of you talked about policy making, which then takes us to government. And the NDCs that you are talking about that are being engaged now, we are also getting engaged, but generally the executive takes the lead in terms of that. But I think the message is very clear from you, which does not only talk about you, it talks about South Africa as a whole, in how we engage on some of the issues that are beginning to impact on our lives, and how possible our approaches might be limiting a positive impact that would get. So I'm saying we are very happy with the messages from the members of parliament. They are speaking for the committee. And with the facilitation from Melanie, then we are not going to lose you. We'll take it from here and move forward. Otherwise, thank you very much for the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
I'm
Chairman.
done.
Okay.
Yes.
Done. Thank you very much. Let me just see. Is there any other member of parliament? Honorable Mbata Phillips, do you want to add to any of this or ask a question or engage? Honorable Phillips, yes.
Thanks, Melanie, and I'd like to also say thank you to everybody that did a presentation. I really love your enthusiasm. I think some of us get a bit jaded as we get old, and we need you to remind us why we are here and what the enthusiasm is actually about. We need enthusiasm. We also need young legs like you've got, because ours get too old. But I'd love to see you in Parliament. I'd love to see you doing a presentation to our committee so that it can actually become part of our record. So thank you so much for that suggestion. Thanks a lot.
Honorable Mbata, yes.
Hi, how are you?
I am good, and you?
I'm fine. Let me just open my video. I think I heard what the young people are saying, although it's difficult because I don't have a presentation from them. I would love to have the presentation so that it's much better to look at the presentation and prepare for them a proper responses, because now we don't have a presentation when we didn't get it before. So we won't be doing justice to them, but I'm very much happy on what they are taking. And I would align myself with Honorable Singh, and my chairperson to say, when Honorable Singh said this must be discussed, we must give them time to come to our PC meeting so that they can present and have the better idea. But before they come there, we must get their presentation so that when they come to our PC, it's going to be easier for us to respond correctly to them. And also the issue of Parliament on climate change is very important. Climate change is a serious problem, not only with us in South Africa, but all over. And I'm happy when they are not selfish, but they are saying that this needs to be run in all provinces by the people, by young people from those provinces, because there is that organization that is for change on climate change and other environmental issues. I'm part of that, one of the people who always support and sign the petitions, because it's environment is one of my key subjects, one of my profession that I can't say I will divorce it. It's part when I started my first diploma. So, and it's my specialty. So I would love to assist you, but let's assist you as a team from the portfolio committee, which is led by the our chairperson, Honorable Kaso. And it's going to be much better because we'll be able to assist you more. But for now, it was just, I will take it, it was just an introduction for the team. But like Honorable said, we need to have also the provinces, we need to also have the national departments, we also have SALGA, because I know it happens that I'm from Gauteng. I know Gauteng, when it comes to waste pickers, they are doing the best, and it's being led by the provincial department of GDART. So they even have forums where the waste pickers will come to some workshops, and sometimes it's just meetings, continuous meetings where they will invite the specialists to come and present. So that's when they learn in that forum. So I believe that it's a good initiative from Gauteng, but other provinces need to also make sure that they copy it and use it in their provinces. And I know that the department, our department has got, I think, more than 500 waste pickers that they are looking after. And I think, I don't think, I know during the COVID, they were looked after by the department where the minister and the deputy minister will go, including our MEC in Gauteng. They want to give them vouchers, food parcels and so forth, the PPE and so forth. So there's a lot that is being done that you might not know, maybe because you haven't researched more on climate change. And I know because there are also NGOs or organizations that are running their own their own programs to look after the waste pickers. I know that one of them is my brother, but he's Zuzam Bata, he's in Joburg. They usually assist the waste pickers on issues of food, on issues of lots of things, they empower them. So what I'm saying is that Gauteng, you all know that, but Gauteng, we always say Gauteng, Kimaboneng. That's where clever people come from, but they are not from Gauteng. Remember, we come from different provinces, but we land in Gauteng because there's a gold and diamond, but now I think we'll go back to Ladysmith because there's diamond there. So that we can have that diamond. So what I'm saying is that there's a lot that is being done. And if you can go to the website of the department, you just Google the website of the department, you'll get lots of pieces of legislations and standards and so forth, where they are developed by the department. It will be useful for you as young people. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Bata. Just before I close, I just want to give the young activists an opportunity, if you each want to just do a quick roundup of what you know, if there's anything else you wanted to say, and then I'll come back at the end. Who wants to go first?
Right, yeah, I'll go first. All right, so just to, yeah, this has been quite a fruitful discussion, and definitely looking forward to, you know, what comes to fruition after this. But definitely looking forward, you know, to having, you know, more engagements like this in a more formalized way. And just to sum up all the points that we had, you know, on education, on using what we have as a country, definitely more emphasis needs to be put on making sure that climate education it's you know, integrated into our schooling system, but also that we view it in a manner that is a bit more pragmatic. So having, you know, practical skills for young people to, you know, partake in, because what we see, people view climate change as an environmental issue, of which it is not. And we spoke about the term of intersectionality today. So, looking at it holistically, climate change will definitely affect society. It'll definitely affect economy. We've seen how COVID-19 has done that. And we've seen government's response and, response of other stakeholders to COVID-19. And so we'd definitely like to see the very same urgency being given to climate change, because it has the potential to have even more, impact, even more disastrous impacts on our communities, on our societies, worsening issues like inequality in the country, which is already we're already the most unequal, one of the most unequal countries in the world. And so if we do not really prioritize investing our resources, investing our time and energy into combating climate change and coming up with efficient measures for climate action, then it's a very grim picture. And I don't think, as a country, we definitely want to go into that, and raising ambition for our NDCs, because our NDCs is probably our greatest chance for, achieving any substantive climate action at a national, international level. So making sure that we put more time and energy into those, and empowering the voices of young people, diverse young people in that process is something that's really important. So that's the closing, and I'd like to hand over to Michelle. Thank you.
Thanks, Wesiso. I think from me, it's very, very refreshing to hear that we won't have to carry the burden of having to do the work that we do without support. So it's really, really amazing to hear that powerful figures such as yourselves are very willing to not only chip in, but to be very involved in the change-making processes that are associated with us bringing education to such communities, but more than anything, raising awareness, as well as allowing these people to understand and then have a way to deal with the aftermath of climate change. So it's really, really amazing. As a person who's passionate about education, it's really, a thing that I'm very, very excited to see what comes out of this. Because, at ACA, we do have we have an attempt at these educational workshops where we break down climate change and all its other facets in these educational workshops, which are meant to make education very accessible to someone who might never have heard climate change before, or someone whose first language might not necessarily be English. So it's really, really amazing to hear that going forward, there is a possibility of us engaging further, maybe even in a formal position. So I can't wait to see what the future has for us, and just very, very honored to be here.
Yeah. So I once again CC myself into the words of my fellow comrades. And would like to just in closing say, we might be these, oftentimes after meetings, people in specific places, turn to us solely. And I'd say that we don't function in the way that Western media views or European media views activists. In South Africa, there's no single Greta. I feel as though the movement is the movement, and that if I fall today, if Sibusiso falls today, Michelle falls tomorrow, the movement is still going to continue regardless of who is being more vocal than the others. And so it's not just a movement about not to undermine anything that was mentioned, but not just a conversation about waste pickers. It's not just a conversation about education. It's a conversation about socio-environmental and economic justice. It's a conversation about system change. And at the end of the day, if we don't prioritize those in an intersectional and incorporative way, one where we value the points of adaptation, we value the points of mitigation, of resilience building, where we value the voices of those who have not been given a voice in the past, then it's a waste of time if we don't do that. And so thank you to all the honorable members for holding the space today. And thank you, Melanie, for the amazing facilitation. I could never. So truly thank you. And I am deeply, deeply appreciative of being able to speak today, but will also, to end it on a bittersweet note, will also be keeping my eyes and ears open to see if words were simply that, which I don't think it is, because everyone present is, I believe and I honestly trust that you wouldn't say something in vain, and there were no promises made, but I take your word for your word. And so I will be keeping my eyes and my ears open, because we've been slighted one too many times to take it too casually. But I am truly grateful for the space I had today. On behalf of myself and my fellow activists, thank you.
Thank you for that. And thank you, first of all, to the members of Parliament for the time. I know you're in recess, so it's always, I know you have to actually physically take time out from your constituents. And thank you for that. We felt it was important to do it today before Youth Day. So thank you for that. I want to say thank you to Gabriel, Michelle, and Sibusiso as well. I really appreciate that. And I understood the sensitivities very quickly about them feeling tokens and so on. So I will also take it upon myself, there's been some texts flying underneath as well, to see how we can in any way help and facilitate some more engagements between the members of Parliament and yourselves. And if we can create another forum for that or another opportunity, and also if we can assist in any way in the formal sort of preparations for presenting to Parliament and so on. So I will be in touch as well myself. Thank you, Chairperson, again, thank you for your time and for allowing us to do this. And I hope everybody has a lovely Youth Day tomorrow. A good day. I know for many, like the chairperson and so on, it brings up a lot of memories. Yes, we honor you and we say thank you for everything you've done. Yes, so that's all from our side. Thank you very much. And we'll speak soon, hopefully when you are back in Parliament again in a couple of weeks.